Welcome to The Joe Show, a podcast that has real conversations with real people about topics that really matter to you. And now your podcast host, Joe Amaral. So we're doing things a little bit differently today. We are talking about your journey from Jerusalem to Liberia.
Yeah, to Monrovia. What a journey.
Right. Totally different, totally out of left field, kind of. And yeah, like you just got back from Liberia. How was the trip? What happened?
Yeah, well, today is, I don't even know what the date is. It's Wednesday when we're taping this in real time, so whatever that day is. And I got back.
The days all blend together.
Yeah,
It's
Blur's Day. And I got back Sunday night, whatever day that was. It was Sunday. And, it was different. I think we both knew that it was going to be a different kind of an experience. I've never traveled during a global pandemic before.
Yeah, who has?
Yeah, or shortly thereafter.
Right.
Some people might say, "Oh, you're nuts. Why would you go?" And don't you see what's going on? And it wasn't like a blind decision. We didn't say, "Oh, we're going and we don't care."
Right. No, it was very calculated. I mean, we had been looking at all the numbers. We had been seeing how, the numbers in Canada had dropped, and even in Europe we were watching. We were paying very close attention, and we thought this was probably the right window, because if there does happen to be like a second wave of this, we're sort of maybe in between the waves.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely were watching the numbers, and on July 1st, Air Canada said we're opening up again for international travel, so that kind of got my attention. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But you can't fly directly to Liberia. You got to go through Europe, so you got to make sure you can go through there. And then on July 1st, the EU made their announcement. I think it was 15 countries initially that were at a place where COVID was under control enough that they would allow, transit through their airport. And Canada was one of the first on the list. And I was like, that's it, I'm going.
I think July 2nd, you booked your ticket.
Literally, no messing around. July 2nd, I booked the ticket, and that was it. I never looked back. Yeah. And I didn't know what to expect.
Right.
I got to be honest with you. And for anybody who's listening, go back on, what I leave, July 29th? I think it was.
Something like that,
so go back to my social media and watch the posts from the 29th and the 30th, where I posted videos at the Toronto airport, Montreal, and Brussels. I mean, it was like out of an apocalyptic movie scene.
Right.
Especially when I got to Brussels, Karen. There was like nobody there. I went to the very back of the terminal just to kind of get a look and look down the hallway.
Corridor. Yeah.
It's like, wow, like, listen to the sound. In an international terminal. I mean,
that never happens.
No, it was insane. And so you don't know really what to expect, because, before you go, you have a little bit of a paranoia and, what's going to happen. And, we've learned a lot since COVID, first kind of surfaced here end of February, beginning of March, where we thought if you step outside, you're going to catch it. And, we know now that it's a little more difficult to transmit than initially was thought. And you have to be really within, like, really close to a person. They have to cough basically right in your space, and then you have to inhale it. So it's not like we first thought it was going to be, but still.
But still, there were some nerves surrounding it.
Of course there was. A little bit, kind of freaked out a bit. Yeah. And then, I knew we had to wear the mask the whole time.
I think that was probably the thing I was most worried for you, is like, how would you do wearing the mask for the whole trip?
Yeah. I mean, okay, think of yourself if you pop into the grocery store, to get some stuff, and you're in there for 30, 40 minutes. By the time you get to the car, you're like, oh, take this thing off my face, right?
Well, our daughter's a nurse, and she has to wear her mask her entire 12-hour shift.
Yeah.
Can't take it off. And so I was thinking, wow, this is going to be
more than double that.
Yeah.
And you kind of think, it's not that big a deal. I can do it. And then, you get on the first leg to Montreal. Okay, it's a short little hop. But you can't take it off when you get off the plane.
Right.
Because you're not outdoors. You're still in a terminal, so you have to keep it on. Then you have a 5-hour layover. You're like, okay, then it's an 8-hour flight. And then it's a 6.5-hour layover. And then on it goes. And by the time you get there, two things happen. You have a little bit of a panic attack along the way. You're like, I can't breathe. And so you kind of do a quick lift and put it back down. Just give me a second of fresh air,
Yeah.
And going, you had that paranoia. Coming back was a different story. After spending a couple weeks in Liberia and kind of getting, living with with these limitations of masks and stuff, you kind of get used to it. So coming home, it was a lot easier. And everybody wears their masks, so you feel safer. You know that you're a lot more protected. But when you get there, you have to show your negative COVID-19 test. You have to then there's, like in Canada, we have to quarantine for 2 weeks when we get back. They don't have that there just yet, but you do have to wear your masks and keep your distance. And I was actually pleasantly shocked that whenever you go like into a legitimate store, not somebody's shop like on a side street, but in Monrovia, we had to go to a music store to get something. And, there's a hand washing station outside. You have to wear your mask or you can't go inside. They check your temperature before they go inside. And you're like, that's actually more than we're doing here in Canada. Yeah. I've never had to do that here. Yeah. So I was really, really impressed.
And each county that you drove through, they would make everybody get out of the car and wash their hands and sanitize. And
yeah, if you didn't have sanitizer in your car, you're right. You had to get out and wash your hands. And if you had it, they would say, wash your hands. And they would watch you sanitize your hands. And they're like, okay, you can go. And I was like, wow, Liberia, good for you. And they had signs everywhere. Yeah. Coronavirus is real. Wash your hands, keep distancing. I was I wonder amazed.
Too if they went through the Ebola crisis not that long ago. Right. And so I think probably all of those safety measures that they had to put in place for that made them maybe a little bit more prepared for something like this.
Oh, big time. And they didn't get it till a month and a half after it ripped through Europe and then came to North America. So they had a window into this thing can spread really fast. So we need to curb it at the beginning. Yeah. And they did. And when I was there, they had to revise their numbers of COVID cases and deaths because COVID is coinciding with what they call their fever season, which is the rainy season, which is when the malaria, when the mosquitoes are, what's the word?
Active.
When they're
producing. Producing?
Yeah.
Reproducing.
Yeah.
That's the word.
Yeah. And so, and because
they're making little things.
And so, the mosquitoes are reproducing and the rain kind of brings them out. And a lot of people get malaria. And it's like we get the cold over here. What's wrong? Oh, I have malaria. Oh, okay. I'll be better in 4 or 5 days. So you get a fever, you get aches and pains, you get problems with breathing sometimes. So it was very close to COVID. But then when they were doing trace contacting, they were noticing that the people who apparently had COVID, nobody, like if they had 10 or 11 people living in their house, nobody had COVID. So they're like, oh, this isn't COVID. It's just the standard, malaria, the fever. And so the cases actually were pretty low. And then I was in parts of the country where people had never heard of the coronavirus. I mean, we were so deep in the jungle sometimes that people were like, well, what are you talking about?
Right.
So I felt good. I felt safe all around. But more than just, going during a pandemic, the reaction of people. First of all, you're white, so you really stand out.
Right.
I mean, outside the Capitol where there's no business, when they see you, they're like, are you lost, sir? Like, can we help you? So, no, I'm here on purpose. They're like, why? On a good day, but during, the end of a global pandemic, they're like, you came? I said, yeah, God has called me just to come and love on you guys and to be here and just to do whatever we can do to help. And every church, every meeting, in the restaurant at the hotel I was at, everywhere, people were like, we can't believe you came. Wow, you must really love us. And I said, yeah, I mean, it's just, it's a love that God gave. So just for that alone, for the reaction of the people, they would clap when you would walk into a church. They're like, Pastor Joe, we knew that you loved us, but you're here. Of all times, you're here. And they said that at every meeting I went to. And I was kind of like, I didn't see it as that big a deal.
Right.
And, they're like, it must be so difficult. I said, you know what? It was so easy because God called me to do it.
Right. Yeah, I remember when Wayne Hilsden was in Israel and wars would be breaking out and things like that.
Yeah, and terrorism would be on the rise or whatever.
Right, and people would be like, you're the one that stayed. So basically, the Liberians are the ones saying, hey, you're the one that came during this really scary and rough time, and you came and visited us.
Well, yeah, because you can say on a Facebook post, hey, I love Liberia from the safety of my beautiful home in Canada with electricity and food and a fridge, and that's easy to say. But when you get off the plane and you walk onto their platform, they're like, whoa, you really love us. So, I mean, it was so moving to see their reactions.
So you worked in a ministry that was heavily involved in Israel since 2002 to 2016.
That's right.
So you were there 14 years. And then
Boom.
Why Liberia? Like how did that come about? And
yeah, I mean, it's a really long story, as you know, and I don't think we've ever like really publicly talked about the transition from First Century Foundations to Christian Research Group, to Huntley Street, to Portico, to Hope for Liberia. Like the last couple of years has been just
it's been
insane.
4 years of a big ride.
It's been like hop. And it's almost like you're testing out everything and you're pushing all the doors and seeing which ones are going to open, which ones close. And it's kind of like a process of elimination and kind of trying to figure out where you are.
Yeah. Sort of a fine tuning, I think.
I think it is.
Yeah.
And everything I know now, that everything I went through and everything that I experienced and was able to do really did prepare me in every sense of the word for what we're doing in Liberia now. So back in 2002, I went to Israel and kind of got this whole, revelation of understanding, Jesus through his culture and that's still a part of me. I mean, it always will be.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I do that in Liberia and they call it going backstage with Pastor Joe because they don't understand idioms and all that. So, we call it going backstage and seeing what's really going on. So that's a part of me. It always will be. And it very much has affected what I'm doing in Liberia. But yeah, for 14 years, I traveled literally all around the world. And, when I first started, at least with First Century Foundations, your mom and dad had been running it on their own. And it was, it was good and it was doing well. And then when I came on, God just used the passion, for the Hebraic roots to be able just to kind of take it to a whole other level, I launched the TV show and that did really well. And I wrote the book, Understanding Jesus, and that did really well. And I traveled to Hong Kong and China and South Africa, and I went to Australia and England, all over the world teaching it, and it was awesome, and I loved it. But then when it came time to take the directorship of the ministry, I knew right away, it's not my heart. It's not my passion to do what your dad had been doing. Right. Just doing the Hebraic root stuff, that's me all day long. But taking the reins and kind of, pushing the whole idea of visiting the ministries in Israel and raising, prayer support for that, it wasn't my baby and it wasn't my passion. And I knew that it wouldn't be fair to the ministry to stay just for the sake of, of steady income. I said, no, that's not fair to the ministries. It's not fair to the people giving. And it was both a hard decision and not a hard decision. It was hard because, I'd been there for so long and knew everybody. But it was easy in the sense that I knew I wasn't called to take it into the next chapter. So I stepped away in 4 years ago, August 2016.
Right.
And so stepping away from that, and then I had been a guest for many years on 100 Huntley Street, right? And then I started acting as a guest co-host, and then as a permanent co-host, and then eventually I became the host of the show, and I was doing that. And I don't know, even though they were great and the ministry's influence was great across our country, I don't know, there was just something unsettled in me, like, this isn't you, this isn't yours. There's something else, but I didn't know what. So I walked away from that, and people thought, Joe, right. I know, but again, I can't just stay because it's comfortable. That's not enough for me.
Right.
Maybe it's free. It's not enough for me. I got to be passionate about it. I'd rather be broke and passionate, like really. And we're pretty close. So, and then I was offered a position, at a good sized church in the Toronto area, and same kind of thing. It was going really well. I mean, the ministry was growing. The Bible studies were growing. And that same feeling, this isn't yours. This isn't what I've called you to do. And so I walked away from that. And again, people said, are you nuts? That's a great gig. And I said, again, if I'm not passionate about it, I can't stay just because it's comfortable.
Yeah.
And we've always been like that. We've chosen passion over
comfort.
Over comfort.
Yeah.
So I left there, and we just went back on the road for a year and change with the Christian Research Group, which, we started. And, I was traveling, and, it was going, especially the first year. I mean, it was really, people were excited. I was back on the road. We had lots of invitations. It was great. And then it started to slow down. And I remember thinking, oh, that's kind of weird. Why is it slowing down? and in that moment when I was discouraged, I can look back on it now and
Right.
go, oh God, you were slowing it down so that it would be easier for me to walk away from so that I could go to Liberia.
So if we backtrack a little bit though.
Sure.
In 2015.
Oh, you want to go with 2015?
Yeah. 2015 was not a good year for us.
Close to 2020.
Yeah. There were a lot of things going on. But in 2015, Pastor Sam in Liberia, he had this amazing thing happen to him.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and actually, he just told it again.
Yeah.
On this past trip.
Okay.
He told it in front of the whole church, and it was great to be reminded of it again. Because I said, Sam, I kind of remember what you said, but give me the full thing.
Yeah.
So he was at a conference, I believe it was down in South Africa. And on the way home, they stopped off in Accra in Ghana, and they decided to stay for 2 weeks and do some visiting around. And he just walked into a church. He didn't know the pastor, So when an African guy walks into an African church, big deal. You don't stand out. It's whatever. And he went to the service, and after the service, it was the pastor who came up to him. And this is 2015. Sam had just been accepted into a well-known Christian university in the U.S. Full scholarship worth hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wow.
They were going to pay for his flights, his visas, his accommodations, everything. So he's ready to go.
And for his family to come too.
And for his family to come. That's a big
commitment.
A big jump
Yeah.
from Liberia to America.
Right.
And he was on the verge of going. And then he stopped into this church in Accra, and the pastor said, God says that a big blessing is coming to you, but it's not through America, it's through Canada. And this is in 2015.
Right.
And Sam goes, Canada? No, you mean America. There's money in America. There's influence in America. False prophet, get thee behind me, What do you mean Canada?
Right.
So he parked the idea, and I know we've had this conversation where we look back and we're like, wow, 2015, it was like, I'm going to call it for what it was. It was a year of hell for us.
It was literally the worst year of our lives. I don't think I had ever cried more. And just, we were like, there were no hills. There were only valleys in that year, honestly. That was such a difficult year for and everything.
They say there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, but I didn't see any light.
That was a hard one.
It was a tunnel. And and to look again now, when you have the drone view of your life, and you look at it and you go, wow, God.
So you think, okay, when we were in the midst of the worst year of our lives, God was already speaking to Pastor Sam about, I'm going to do something. He already had a plan in mind, even though we were in like the hugest valley we had ever been in. God says, I see the big picture. I'm in the background. I'm working on something.
Exactly. And so, again, just to pull back and look at that and go, wow, God, you were preparing him. And so now we fast forward to 2018. I'd left already First Century. I'd left Portico. I had left Huntley Street. And, people are like, what are you doing? You're going back. Dude, you're like going to be 50. Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know. This is just kind of like the natural flow of the river for me right now. I'm just kind of going with where God is taking me. And then in November 2018, this guy who I'd never met before, Pastor Sam Abel Binsey, from Liberia, a country that I don't think I'd ever really heard about, didn't know where it was. I was certain it was African, but I didn't know where. Out of the blue, this guy writes me and he says, we need this teaching in Liberia. And he was referring to the Hebraic roots. So it was a neat connection.
Yeah.
He would watch my YouTube videos online and just be blown away and thinking, oh God, if we could get this guy into our churches, it would just help us so much. Because Liberia, I can't speak for all African countries because I don't know them all, but I'm really getting to know Liberia. A lot of the times it's a cultural thing. Preachers get up there and you yell and you scream and you dance and you spit. And when it's all over, there's really been nothing taught. There's been a lot of energy, and people leave, hey, happy, but like, what's that doing, for your walk with God during the week when tragedy hits and all that kind of happens? And this is what the pastors told me. They said, Pastor Joe, we need the tools so we can actually divide the word of God and teach it and give people the power of what he's saying. And so they fully embrace what I'm doing. But before we get there, so Sam sends me this little note saying, we really need this teaching over here. And, we agreed to go over. And I'll never forget that one line where he said, Pastor Joe, the people of Liberia aren't stupid. We're not ignorant. It's just that nobody will come here and teach us. And I'm like, what do you mean nobody will come?
Yeah.
And then you go there and you realize, oh, nobody will come. You got to pay for your flight.
Right.
You got to pay for your hotel if you want water and electricity. You got to pay for your food. You got to raise all the funds for any ministry you want to do. You have to give your books away. They average on a good week $5 US a week in their offerings. So how dare you think they're going to pay you $500 or $1,000?
Right.
I mean, there's no way. And I went, nobody comes here because there's no money. I said, God, there's no way I'm letting money get in the way of what you want to do.
Right.
You have the money. Give me the money so I can go.
And I mean, without even a charity in place, you put it out there online just saying, there's this opportunity, but we don't have the finances to go. And people they gave from all corners and saying, we believe in this. We believe in these, these teachings, the Hebraic roots that need to get out there.
And, it was like a Moses moment. We had to say, okay, you can stop giving now. I just needed whatever it was, $2,500 to buy the ticket for my son and I, and enough just to, get some food and go over there. We had to, like Moses, stop giving the gold. We have more than enough. And I was like, wow, I've never had a response like that before. People were so excited for it. And so, Well,
and then your birthday was around that time. And
that's
so
right.
For your birthday, we did kind of like this little challenge of, and just everybody, all the gifts that they brought you that year were to go to Liberia.
Yeah.
So we had things like, medical supplies, like bandages and then medicines,
basic hygienic things like
soap,
toothbrush, toothpaste. So it was amazing, and that was trip one. And I went to South Africa, had a wonderful time, but God didn't give me a burden, to start a ministry there. Went to Australia, had a great time. I went to England, I went to Hong Kong a bunch of times. So I thought maybe, hey, I'll go to Liberia. It's another really cool thing to put on my, I don't know, whatever you call it, what do you call it?
List of countries that you visited.
Yes, I've also been to West Africa. You'll come home and your life will go on.
Right.
But man, did God have a surprise in store for us when we got there. Our son Daniel came with us that first trip, and I think sometimes we glamorize poverty. You're like, oh, I'm going to go there and I'm going to be a blessing to these people, and then you get off the plane, you're like, whoa, this is like legitimate poverty, and just to see it over and over again everywhere you go. I mean, it's everywhere, and so God just broke my heart for the nation. And then I came back and I began to share with you what we were seeing. I mean, God had already been working on both of our hearts.
Goodness.
I mean, way before I went.
We couldn't even talk about Liberia without like our eyes filling with tears. And I remember talking to my mom and dad about this and saying, what is up with me? And my mom said to me, she said, Karen, when we got the call to Israel, she goes, it was the exact same thing. I could not stop crying and I didn't know why. And it was literally God breaking our hearts for these precious people
that we'd never met.
Right.
And now we've met them. Now I know them. I mean, they're the sweetest people, and they're so grateful and so thankful. So that's kind of, believe it or not, the shortest version that I can give you. I'm not even giving you the story in the Stars Connection and the guy from 100 years ago, Jasper Toe. That'll be maybe another conversation, but just getting there and then not realizing, wow, God, this is why everything else kind of fell to the side and didn't become as important. And all of a sudden, this is all there seems to be. It's like, when I go to bed, I'm excited because, in the middle of the night, Pastor Sam will respond to me for the question that I had. So I struggle to sleep until he writes me back at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
And then I wake up, all excited to get his message. And then I think about all day, God, what can I do? What can we do? And what's next? And
well, speaking of what can you do?
Yeah.
What's been happening? What have been the most recent projects that you're like? I know you're always waking up in the middle of the night with an idea, and God always plants these little things, and you'll wake up and you go, Karen, we're supposed to do this.
Well, so I've been home now for a few days. So about 2 weeks before I left for Liberia. Or was it a week? I don't remember. Maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I woke up on a Friday morning and I went, chickens. And you're like, what? I said, I think we should buy chickens. We should build a chicken coop, and we should buy a few hundred chickens.
Right.
And, the ones that they call the layers, eggers. And if we get enough chickens, we can get thousands of eggs every month once they reach, the certain age. And we can feed so many people in the community. We can sustain them. This is what we got to do. And so, of course, I messaged Pastor Sam and I said, hey, look into getting chickens. And he knows me well enough by now to be like, okay.
Yeah. Well, I think he had just been talking about it too. Wasn't it a couple days before you had approached him about it?
Yeah. Which was so cool. So they're doing some agricultural work. And so they just kind of decided to plant some, green onions and string beans and sweet potatoes. They're trying some corn, some plantains, all kinds of different things. And while the guys were working in the field, they were saying, oh, Pastor Sam, this is so great because for so long we've been working for other people and, getting minimal pay. And then they're the ones taking all the food and crops home. And it's the same with chickens. We've been caring for chickens for like 10 years and we don't even get an egg. I mean, we just do the work and then they take it all away. It would be so great if one day God would give us that. Yeah. And then literally like 48 hours later, I wake up, chickens. So Sam's like, okay, that's it, and 3 days later, he's like, okay, here's the price for the chickens. Here's how much it'll cost to build a coop to house that many chickens and to get the feed, immunization and the lights and the feeders and boom, it's done. And next thing you know, I'm in Liberia and they're building the chicken coop. They're digging the foundation by hand. They're bringing in the stones. We got the screening around. We got the roof up. And, go to my Facebook or Instagram page. And during, July 30th through August 15th-ish, you'll see I posted daily videos on the updates and the progress of the chicken coop. And it's been absolutely amazing. And I'm so excited to say that the chicken coop and the chickens are we raised all the money that we needed for them. And right now they're on their way as we speak today. I don't know when you're listening to this, but as we're recording this, they're going to meet with the chicken guy to find out the type of chickens that we need, the ones that lay the most kind of eggs. So it's been an incredible journey. So that's been our main thing. And then also we started working with an orphanage. And so we don't start these ministries. We find people there already who have a passion and compassion to work in their communities. And then God brings us alongside them and we say, hey, how can we help you serve the community better? I don't live here, so what can I do to make your ministry more effective? Oh, Pastor Joe, if we had this and we could do this. And that's what people see online. When I make posts, it's us working alongside ministries who are there. It's Liberians helping Liberians. And so we were introduced to an orphanage called Winners Outreach Academy. And I saw the video, that Sam took while he was visiting these kids and, just melted my heart. And, instantly we both said, we got to do something. Right. And so we bought mattresses because they were sleeping on the floor and it was awful. They had no water. So we dug a well for them. And, we've been buying just as many bags of rice as we can. And it had been a really long day and we thought, oh, should we just put off visiting the orphanage? Because it's been such a crazy busy day. And it's like, no, we came all the way here. We got to go visit the kids. And then the pastor called me and he said, they've been waiting since 6 a.m. this morning for you. You're like, oh, bleeding heart. Okay, we got to go. Yeah. So you get in your truck and once you get off the main road, again, go watch the videos of the roads. I'm using air quotes of the roads you take to get there. And people are like, why are you always having to fix your truck? Watch the video. Yeah. And so we get to the orphanage and I have here beside me this little blue flower. And by the time this podcast goes live, I'm going to post a picture. Pastor Solomon took it of the little girl giving me this flower. And so this sweet little girl, she came all shy. You have to remember, I'm the first white person they've ever seen. Nobody goes to visit them. They don't go to visit anybody themselves. So I was the first non-African to show up at their orphanage, and she came up with this little blue flower and gave it to me. She was all like sheepish and shy, and I thanked her for it. And I couldn't hug her because of COVID, but I thanked her for it. And the kids, they sang songs to me, and just, oh, I'm so glad we went. It was worth every bump in that road, every mile, every kilometer that we had to drive to get there. It was so worth it. And I remember we were talking later that night.
Mm-hmm. I remember that was probably the most difficult day for you there.
Yeah, it was rough. Yeah. You're like, are you okay? I'm like, I don't think so. Yeah. Something happened? I said, no, nothing's wrong. Mm-hmm. Like, nothing happened. I just...
You were really burdened by it, I think. Yeah. That was a really heavy emotional day for you.
Yeah, well, Mother Agnes, they call her, the one who kind of runs the orphanage, took me around and showed me the facilities. It was like, oh my God. It was just dilapidation, isn't even the word I would use. And these kids are living in these incredibly horrific conditions, and yet they come and they greet you with a smile. They had signs for me, welcome, Pastor Joe. It was the sweetest thing. And so between the chicken coop, which thankfully has been paid for, now we're praying about, God, what can we do for this orphanage? What can we do for these kids and other orphans in the area? And unfortunately, there's a lot of orphans. People can't take care of their kids, and so they drop them off to somebody who has a little more means than they do. So we're asking people, please, hop on, go to hopeforliberia.com, get all our e-transfer information there. And we want to raise as much as we can to do as much as we can for these kids. They deserve everything and more that we can do for them.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I am so excited for what God is doing there.
See, and I love that, I mean... Maybe we shouldn't have called this the Joe Show, because it's not just about Joe. It's Joe and Karen who are on board for what God is doing in Liberia. And you're as excited as I am. And you have as much, if not more, empathy for people than I do. And I love that we're in this together, that the passion is coming from both of us.
Yeah. You just happen to be more of the mouth.
Okay.
Well, I'm usually the quiet one. I mean, this is actually out of my comfort zone to be doing something like this. So
yeah, no, but I think it's important for people to know that we're doing this, together. And I'm the face. I'm the one who goes. I'm the one you're going to see on social media. You may not see Karen in front of the camera, but we are equally passionately in this thing, bringing hope to and for Liberia.
So we're called Hope for Liberia, which was, a huge part of what we want to bring to Liberia.
Right.
It's not just, it's not just provision. It's not, but it's so much more.
It's more than just money and stuff.
Yeah. But during this time of COVID, there have been a lot of feelings of hopelessness, I think, because finances have been so difficult for the people there. They've had to be in lockdown for several months. It's difficult for them to earn money. So how are we helping?
Yeah. So even though COVID-19 isn't slamming Liberia like the same way it did here in Canada and especially in the US, because the cases are really low. We already talked about how the fever season was throwing the numbers off. So there's not a ton, of cases there, but the economic effect is catastrophic. So they can't import rice. They can't sell what little exports they do have. So, imagine being poor, and, we talked to people where a few widows we had some meetings with, and they're averaging between $250 US a year. That's their salary. That's what one was selling soap. Some makes little sandals they sell in the market. Well, now they can't go to the market.
Right.
Because it's too busy. They can't afford the masks. They can't afford the sanitizer. So they stay at home. So people's hope has been going down, down, and down.
Right.
So just by being there in person and being right in front of them and speaking with them right away brings hope to them. Of course, helping the orphanage and the chicken coop and buying the rice and we're buying, clothing for children in villages, and that all brings hope. But I think the greatest way we've been bringing hope to people is just by being there with them. It just, they don't know how to process it, because they're like, no one has ever loved us like this before, has loved us enough to get on a plane and fly to the other side of the world through a pandemic to come here just to look us in the eye and say, God hasn't forgotten you. When I would say that, people would weep. When I would say, God has not forgotten you. He sent me to to tell you, to remind you that he loves you and he has a plan for you, and we're going to get through this, and we're going to do this. And I mean, we're living up to our name. You know, we're not the hope for Liberia, but God is the hope for Liberia. And, you know, you can bring all the food in the world you want and bring all the clothing and money, but they're still going to be hungry tomorrow. They're still going to need clothes next month. But when you can instill and light that spark of hope in them, that lasts a lifetime. It's infectious, because hope brings hope to other people.
Right.
You know, it's like if I'm down, you're down, I'm down.
Right.
But the opposite is true.
Yeah.
So going into these communities, we drove to this one village. It was way, way out there. Oh, my Lord. And it's rainy season. You're not supposed to go to the villages. But they really wanted me to see this one. I said, okay, let's go. And by God's grace, we made it there. The roads are brutal.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, by the end of it, you're just driving across a grass field. And the locals have to guide you around where the mud pits are so you don't get stuck. And then you pull into this village and you're like going, where are we? Like,
right.
I mean, I don't know where I am. And we driven to another county. I didn't even know it. And we got there, and all the tribal chiefs, because we went to the main village, but there was, I think, what did they say, 8 different villages in the area, and they all came to sit down. Not just to meet the white guy, but to meet the guy who would dare come visit them at a time like this. And they just sat there looking at me, and, you know, through our broken communication, I was able to convey to them why I was there. And we emptied the truck of all the rice we had brought, and we sat with them. And they started to applaud, like just spontaneously applaud, saying, thank you, brother. Thank you for coming to see us. This fills our hearts with hope. This lets us know. Like, this makes us so happy to know that there are people out there thinking of us.
People all over the world who have been giving to this cause. And we want to thank you guys for all the help that you've provided, so that, you know, that we're able to do these things. All of the money that gets raised, other than a couple of little bank fees, all of it goes there. Yeah,
I'm glad you brought that up. And I want people to know that Hope for Liberia, even though we're not a registered charity, we're not officially a nonprofit organization, but we are nonprofit. Like, we don't make any money. You and I don't take any salary for doing this. Even in my non-existent itinerant ministry right now because of COVID, you know, God is providing for our needs. So we're okay in that sense. And yeah, when people give, other than small banking fees and getting to Liberia, every penny that comes in, if we say it's going to this, it's going to that. Right. And I love that we can say that. And I hope that'll always be the way that we're able to operate. So a huge thank you to everyone who has given. And I want you to know that every time you know people give, that it makes a big difference, because a dollar here may not be a lot, but a dollar can get you quite a few things over there. $5 to imagine, you know, people sending $100, $500, and you think, oh, it's not that much. Are you kidding? That's incredible what we can do over there. So we are just blown away. You know, every time you kind of get down and go, we're not a charity, people aren't giving, you know, like other big ministries and stuff, just when you need it, bam, the right amount comes in, and you're like, wow, God, you're taking care of us. You're the one who's in charge of this. So it's such an honor to be a part of what God is doing in Liberia. So we just want to be able to continue doing what we're doing. And, you know, we may not know what's ahead in terms of the future and the direction that God's going to take us in. You know, at 50 years old, I never thought that I would be launching out into missionary work in Africa. I mean, of all places in the world, you know, and you're making the jump from Jerusalem to Monrovia. And you're like, wow, God, I never saw this coming. That good one, man. You totally blindsided me in
Well, and who knows what you're going to wake up with tomorrow morning and go, might not be chickens, but it might be something else. And to do those projects makes such a difference in the people's lives there. Yeah,
and we, you know, and so we've been talking to each other, and we just want to focus on you guys who are listening into this podcast today, and we just want to speak to you directly and say, I don't know, I wish we had a stronger word in English than thank you, because that doesn't adequately convey what's in our hearts. When an e-transfer comes in, a check comes in, and we're like, wow, guess what we can do with this? I mean, so little sometimes can mean so much. And so I'm going to use the strongest word we have. Thank you.
We are so grateful.
Thank you. And the people of Liberia, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, the day I left Saturday morning, I had like a 7:30 a.m. service. I preached there. Then had lunch with a couple of pastors, and they said, please tell the people of Canada, please tell the people of your ministry how thankful we are that they remember us. And so
that they don't feel forgotten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what a privilege, and what a great conversation. And I know there's a lot more that we want to talk about, but I think we're kind of getting a little lengthy, and maybe we'll do a part 2 down the road. But I want to encourage everybody who's listening to this, follow us online, kind of see what we're doing. If you want to be up to date with all of our projects and the progress of where we're at, follow me on Facebook, Joe Amaral Public, Joe Amaral on Instagram. Hope for
Liberia pages.
Yeah, follow Hope for Liberia. Yeah. Thank you very much on Facebook and on Instagram. And just kind of always be, I don't know, what's the word? Just kind of be updated with what we're doing. Because like you said, it was chickens a few weeks ago. Who knows what it's going to be tomorrow? So make sure you like all our social media.
Yeah, we've got a newsletter that comes out every 2 months. So our next one is going to be coming out September 1st.
That's right. And there's going to be a lot of updates in there that I didn't even get to talk about in this podcast today. God is doing so much. And it's awesome to look back and see what he's done. And I think, wow, God, as amazing as everything is that you've done there's still more to do.
Yeah.
So I can't wait till the next podcast on Liberia and be able to tell people about what God has done since this last one. So what an amazing, amazing journey it's been from Jerusalem to Monrovia. This has been The Joe Show. I'm Joe.
And I'm Karen. And thanks so much for listening.